Hello, class. This is Mr. Hart, and in this podcast, I want to start the chapter on rock formation. So let's just get right into it. First thing we need to ask ourselves is what is a rock? And we want to compare it to a mineral because we both know they're naturally occurring and they come from the ground and things like that. But we want to compare what makes something a rock and what makes something a mineral. Okay, so when we think about a rock, we know that they're naturally occurring. They are inorganic, meaning they don't have living material in them. They are non-crystalline in structure, and they can contain minerals. So notice, minerals almost always are crystalline in structure. Rocks almost always are non-crystalline in structure. Okay, so they don't have a nice pattern to them. And then they also usually contain minerals inside of rocks. Okay, so they're kind of like a casing for a lot of minerals, kind of like we saw with geodes in the last chapter. Okay, but this is kind of how we think of a rock. The key feature here I usually say is the non-crystalline part compared to minerals. Okay, so if you remember back to like third or fourth grade, you probably learned about the rock cycle. And so the rock cycle is the set of processes that can happen in order to change one rock type to another rock type. Okay, and if you notice here, there's three different rock types: metamorphic rocks, igneous rocks, and sedimentary rocks. And these little arrows show how we get from one rock type to the other. So for example, if I want to go from metamorphic rock to igneous rock, then I need to melt the rock. Okay, that rock needs to turn into magma, usually above the surface, and then that magma needs to crystallize or freeze, and that will give me an igneous rock. So if I undergo those processes, I can get an igneous rock. Okay. Likewise, if I take an igneous rock and I erode it away, and then I build up the sediment and have it compress over time, it can turn into a sedimentary rock. And so these rocks are always changing over time, over very long periods of time, from thousands to millions of years. Okay, but any rock over time can change into another rock type. So we want to know the rock cycle, and in particular, we want to know the different parts of it. So there's the rock types: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And there's the rock processes: melting and cooling, okay, erosion and sedimentation, burial and metamorphosis. Okay, so if I have an igneous rock, if I have any rock and I want to turn it into igneous rock, then I have to melt it and cool it. If I have any rock and I want to turn it into sedimentary rock, then I need to erode it away and then build up sediment. If I want a metamorphic rock, then I need to bury it and then have a metamorphosis occur. Okay, so I recommend to my students to actually draw a rock cycle themselves. Okay, this can be kind of confusing if you're just looking at a graph. I usually take out these middle arrows. Even though they are there, I think it just takes away from the idea that of the processes. Okay, a lot of people get confused. So I just draw the outside ones of the rock cycle, and then just realize that igneous rock, you need this and this to happen. Sedimentary rock, you need this and this to happen. Metamorphic rock, you need burial and metamorphosis to happen. Okay, so that's the rock cycle. Hopefully that's a review from a previous science class you've taken. All right, so but let's go and dig deeper into each one of these rock types. So let's start with igneous rock. Okay, so this is some pictures from, I believe, the Sierra Nevadas. Okay, it's a mountain range in eastern California / western Nevada. Okay, and this is mostly igneous rock buildup in these pictures, which is kind of strange because there's not like a huge active volcano near western Nevada or anything like that. So, how were these rocks melted and cooled? Well, it turns out these rocks actually were moved here from tectonic plate movement and things like that. Over time, they were magma underneath the surface, and then they were brought up above the surface and slowly cooled. And so then we were able to get these large mountains of igneous rock. Okay, so this is one way igneous rock can form. It cools slowly as it rises above the surface from plate tectonic movement or something like that. Okay, and so we get these large structures. Okay, another way, which is probably the more well-known way of how igneous rock forms, is from cooling of magma that appears above the surface from like a volcanic eruption or something like that. Okay, and so we get this nice black rock. You've probably seen this from like Hawaiian Islands or something like that, seen pictures of this. That's when the magma cools very quickly because it gets shot above the surface, and then it cools rapidly from the air or from water or something like that. Okay, so we have these two definitions we want to understand. The first type I showed you was called an intrusive igneous rock. Okay, that's one that forms below the Earth's surface and then is slowly brought up from natural movements from the plates. Okay, the second is called an extrusive igneous rock. And that forms above the Earth's surface, meaning the magma was shot up in a volcanic eruption of some kind and then cooled by the air or water. Okay, and if you notice, I'll go back to these pictures. An intrusive rock usually has a pretty regular color, kind of a grayish color because it was cooled very slowly, whereas an extrusive rock cools very rapidly, and so we get a lot of bubbles, and it's very porous, meaning it has a lot of holes and has this black color to it, black lava rock that you probably have seen before. Okay, so extrusive rocks usually are this type of color. Okay, and so here's another rock. Again, the porous. I want to help you understand that the rocks are usually porous, meaning they have holes in them, and this isn't the best picture, but you can kind of see all these little cracks and holes inside the rock. Okay, that's kind of a common characteristic with igneous rock that cools above the surface. Okay, so this would be an extrusive rock. Okay, and so again, extrusive igneous rock cools above the surface from magma flow and other things like that cools down rapidly. Okay, the last thing we want to understand about igneous rock is that the faster you cool it, the more smooth it's going to be. Okay, and the more it's going to look like a black lava rock. Okay, so this right here is a chunk of obsidian. And it says this obsidian lava cools so rapidly crystals do not form. Okay, which means we just get this natural glass look to it. Okay, so obsidian is very smooth. Okay, very glossy. And that cooled very rapidly, whereas pumice contains holes. Okay, and it's cooled very slowly, but it kind of has those bubbles trapped while the molten lava cools, and so we get this more gray color, we get more holes. Okay, an interesting fact is pumice is so light that it can float on water. Okay, so I just want to help you kind of see that this cooled very rapidly, this cooled very slowly. Okay, two totally different looking rocks, but they just come from the same. They come from the same magma, basically, right? You can get pumice and you can get obsidian from the same volcanic eruption. Also, we can get underwater basalt. Okay, basalt usually forms when the magma cools underwater. Okay, and so just kind of the way they were cooled down and how rapidly they were cooled down, we can get three different types of igneous rock. Okay, awesome. So that's all we want to look at for obsidian or igneous rock. Excuse me. That's all we want to look at for igneous rock today. But we watched a documentary in class about the formation of Hawaii, and you can see these different types of rock that appear and kind of the lava flow. It's really interesting. So if you have the chance, I recommend seeing this video. Next one we want to look at is sedimentary rock. Okay, and this picture here shows a large cliff overlooking a ocean, and it's quite a steep cliff. I wouldn't want to be on top here. I have a fear of heights. I definitely wouldn't be that far out. But we can see here that there's these different bands of rock layers going along the cliff. So we want to kind of understand how this cliff formed and why we have these different layers. And it comes from how sedimentary rock itself forms over time. Okay, so if you want to think about it, this rock wasn't always didn't always look like this. Okay, it didn't used to have this huge cliff. Okay, and so let's think about the first thing that you need to have for a sedimentary rock to form. Okay, so the first thing you need is erosion. Okay, so usually water is the most common type. You need water to kind of eat away at material. Here's a picture of a river going through a canyon, and you can see that the river's kind of carved out the rock as it's gone over many, many years. Okay, likewise, any river will take material with it, and so that takes away sediment, okay, and builds it up in another location. Okay, so we get the sediment buildup, and sediment is just kind of any type of small particulate matter from a rock. Okay, and as that sediment is taken away, then we can start to get sedimentary rocks. Okay, so two definitions we want to know. Erosion is the gradual process of removing particles from a rock, and sediment is that small particulate matter that comes from that erosion. Okay, so once we have erosion, we get this sediment, then we need that sediment to actually turn into a rock. Okay, and that happens in a process called lithification, okay, or sedimentation. And so lithification is when that sediment kind of deposits in a certain location, okay, and it compresses and builds up until it actually forms a rock. Okay, and the important thing to understand about lithification is you'll get some type of sediment buildup. Okay, so let's say I get this small layer of sediment buildup. Okay, that layer will start to compress and build into a sedimentary rock. But at the same time, I'm probably going to get more sediment buildup on top of that. Okay, then that layer will start to compress and build into a sedimentary rock. And more layers will start to come in of sediment, and the rock will form slowly from bottom to top. Okay, so when you look at pictures like this over here, you can see those different layers compressing. Okay, you can kind of see them along here on this rock surface. You can see them up here, and just throughout this whole rock, you can see those different lines of the compression and layers slowly building up over time from the sediment buildup. And so sedimentary rocks often have those bands and layers because they are building on top of the previous layers, okay, over time. Okay, so that process is called lithification or sedimentation. Okay, it's the process by which sediments are compacted together to form a rock. Okay, so any type of rock you see with sedimentary is usually going to have those layers from that sediment buildup. Okay. The other important thing to understand about sedimentary rock, going back to this this cliff example, is these layers formed from the sediment buildup, but the ocean also has carved away at this rock as well. So this rock is slowly starting to become eroded away, which means it's going to build up sedimentary rock somewhere else. Okay, so with sedimentary rocks, you see a lot of cycling. Okay, sedimentary rock will build up, but then it will be eroded away and put somewhere else, and then that will build up into a new sedimentary rock, and then that might be eroded away. So there's constantly new areas of sedimentary rock being built up as it gets eroded away in new locations. Okay, so more than any other type of rock, sedimentary rock is constantly cycling through different areas and location. Okay, but again, this is over many, many years, thousands to millions, not just once a year you'll see a new rock build up somewhere, but over thousands and millions of years we can see this cycling occurring. Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about is how do we identify sedimentary rocks. Okay, and if you look at sedimentary rocks, one of the big features is those layers like we were talking about from the different buildup. You can see them on these pillars over here. Usually sedimentary rocks are quite smooth. Okay, you can't quite see it from this picture because this is such a large landscape. But if you just depict up an individual sedimentary rock, it'd be quite smooth on the surface because that erosion has naturally made it smooth on the edges. So a lot of the rocks you pick up on the side of the road are sedimentary rocks. Okay, they're nice and smooth. They're usually sedimentary. The other thing you can look for is kind of this grayish / reddish brown color in the rocks. That's quite common for sedimentary rock as well. All right, but that is all we want to cover for this podcast. We'll get to metamorphic rock on the next one, but hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully most of this is a review from a previous science class, but let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.